class will actually get email tomorrow morning on, and I'll have the recording that you can download for this video, so everybody can actually refresh their memory on it as they go through the weekend. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is actually how to assign brands of thread to your embroidery. Now, the benefit of this is most of your embroidery that you do on screen is going to be in a Pantone color, primarily one of the colors that you see on the side over here, okay? Now, these are great. Most people actually don't even assign thread brands to what they have, only because they know their thread colors, and if they're using navy, they pull a navy thread off, put it on the machine, and sew. The colors on screen are just an interpretive color on what the color needs to be, okay, in the design. So they have some kind of guide. But thread branding is a pretty good tool to use, especially if you're training new operators for your machinery. When you print your report on the embroidery design, it'll actually have the thread cone numbers for your operator to pull, so you have consistency of what the customer has signed off on and stuff like that. So we'll just go ahead and we'll create a design. I always do a design from start to finish, and just because it helps you generate any questions you may have in the process of creating a design. Okay, there's only 4 steps to creating a design in Liberty, okay? Only 4 that you have to do every single time, and let's go through it. Step number 1 is we need an image, okay? Now, that image could be anything from a JPEG image to a PNG, clip art, bitmap image, or all the way up to vectored images like a CorelDRAW image or an Adobe Illustrator file, or a DXF or a PLT. All these formats, SVGs and EPSs, are not importable, but if you have a graphics program, you could open them up in a graphics program and just resave them as a CDR or an AI file or a WMF or an EMF file, okay? And then they become, then they'll have the ability to be brought into the StitchEra software here, okay? Let's see. Be mindful of the artwork that you get. A lot of artwork you'll get will not be what they call camera ready. Let's go ahead and go into a folder here. I'm going to just grab maybe a clip art image. I have some clip art images in here. All right, in the rasterized image section here, you can see that we have some graphic images here. Now, these graphic images are going to be, even though they're JPEGs and bitmaps, by the way, you know it's a JPEG and bitmap for 2 reasons. Number 1, when you change the background color of your image, you'll have this white box that's going to be behind your image, okay? So when you have a vector file, like if I were to go to images and I go to vector, and I'll go to the vector section, these images will not have any white background. This is a vectored image, okay? A vectored image also allows you to ungroup objects. You click on it, you see I could separate the different parts of the design. Where a JPEG or a bitmap or a rasterized image does not have any ungroupable properties, okay? Now, does that mean I have to always work with vectors? No, vectoring actually gives me a benefit, one single benefit other than what a JPEG does. I can convert this JPEG image into stitches very easily, just the way it is, okay? The vector image allows me to change different aspects about the design. For instance, if I want to just change the colors, I can change the colors just by selecting a different color over on the sidebar over here, okay? The other thing it allows me to do is divide colors. So if I want to divide these leaves in half, okay, and separate, maybe put this leaf over on this side, because I have a vector, I have this split vectoring tool up at the top. If you click on it, you can just cut this right in half, and now I have 2 sections in which I can move, okay? You could also assign if this is behind this image or in front of it, just by simply clicking on the vectored part and changing the order to the back. Now you'll see it's tucked behind it, okay? You can't do that with a bitmap image. The most common reason why you'd want a vector is because you got to change something about it, okay? This image is basically red lettering with a pair of scissors, okay? So if the customer decided they wanted the red lettering to actually be two colors, red and blue, okay, well then I would need to have a vectored image. Now, what will help you in setting and be able to vectorizing this image, you need to look at the colors, okay? All graphic images that are JPEGs or bitmaps will have what's called pixelation. You could see the sawtooth edges of this letter U. Also, the depth of color of the red, there'll be many colors of red in here, okay? This is actually a pretty good JPEG image. Let me open up another image that will not be, okay? Let's go to the internet, and let's go ahead and go to Google. And let's just go ahead and do, let's just go ahead and do a heart clip art, okay? JPEG images and rasterized images come in resolution sizes. When I put my mouse over top of any one of these hearts, you can see down here this image is 2020 pixels by 17.64. This is good. This means that the red that's in the middle is going to match the red that's on the edge, okay? Now when we go to a lower resolution image, and I'm going to go to Search Tools, and I'm going to go to, let's go to, no, that's all right. I'm just going to go any size, and we'll just find a lower res. Like this is 591 by 591. This is 7. I'm just going to try to see if I can find something that's, yeah, there's 300 by 300. Let's go ahead and save this image to my desktop so I can pull it in. Let's take a look at this one. All right, so when I go to desktop and pull this in, you can see number one, look at the different colors of red that we have on the edge, okay? The red in the middle of the heart is the true red. But as we fade out to the edges, we start to bleed our colors. You can see some of that maroon coloring in the white area, and you can see some of that maroon color, the darker pixels here, okay? Now this would be substantially harder to vectorize than our cut this image out. But we still can do it, okay? And I'll show you how to deal with these JPEGs, okay? On this cut this out, the first step I want to do is reduce colors. In this image, we have a red color, we have a blue color of the scissors, and we have the black. We also have this white background. It is a color, and that it's part of the image. If we go to color reduction up here, and we tell it to look for up to 32 colors, we'll filter. You see we only have the 4 colors. It's only seeing 4 colors. This is a very clean image, okay? Let's go to the other one now. Okay, let's go to this other one. And let's tell it to, let's click on it, and then we'll go to color reduction. Let's tell it to see up to 32 colors. And you can see in my image up here, up at the top, you can see all the colors. It's coming up here just a second. All the different colors of red that it's seeing. Everything from lighter pink all the way up to like a deep maroon here, okay? If this is the case, you first want to be able to reduce your colors in the image before vectorization. The reason why is because when you vectorize, if you just click on Convert to Vector, you're going to have all these different colors of the image that you didn't count on, okay? Like all this, you'll have all this noise in here where different colors peeked out, okay? The shape doesn't look good. Although it doesn't look too bad, it's still not a very true image, okay? So the first step in bad art is actually reducing the colors. And I only have 2 colors, or 3 colors. I got red, maroon, and white. So reduce the colors first to the 3 primary colors. Once you do that, you hit return, and now you vectorize. And when I vectorize, it'll only see the 3 colors, and I could vectorize, and I have a much easier image to deal with, except I have some maroon around here. Now, one thing you can do is combine colors together, okay, when you're vectorizing. If you hold your control button and click on 2 similar colors, and click on Combine, and then Revectorize. And there we go. So now we have a nice clean image. Now what we can do with this, we have an ungroupable image, okay? We could also use split vectoring to do a pattern shape through here. So I can actually just come through here. I'll just do it like a puzzle piece pattern through this. Everywhere I'm cutting inside is actually a new section. Okay, I'm just coming out of the image and going into the image to segment it. And I'll just come right back out. And now we have this two-colored image. Some of the cool things that you can do with vectorization, okay? So now you'll see me click on it. I'm not sure if you can see that. Let me go ahead and choose black. There we go. So now you can see, now we can make a multiple colored image out of the original image that we just had, okay? So that's step number 2. Step number 1 was bringing in your image. Step number 2 is editing your image, and that means resizing it. Step number 3 is converting all the objects in the design to stitches, okay? Now, what I was saying before, you don't really need to convert this to vector, okay? When you have a JPEG that's as clean as this, and to check and see how clean it is, just go to color reduction, all right? And then tell it to look for up to 32 colors, which you see right here. And then hit filter and see how many colors actually come up, okay? If it comes up with the 4 basic colors that you see in your before, then it's a good image, okay? It's a great JPEG to have, okay? Okay, so now once I have this, now I'm just going to convert things to stitches. Because we have a JPEG, we have to convert using the magic wand, the auto digitize feature, okay? So what I'll do is I'll go to Embroidery, and I'll choose my stitch type, and I'm just going to use I'll use a satin stitch on this. Now, when you choose your stitch type, okay, make sure you do all the other stuff too. You have 3 different settings. You have pull compensation, density, and underlay. Density, this image right here on the area fill, number 1, it has the color that you want to choose, and you could choose the color you want from here. Okay? And I am going to do red. This is going to be for the letters. And the density for this will be about 6 stitches per millimeter, only because the lettering is a little bit more than a ½ inch, and it's a wide satin stitch. You can see how bold these letters are. The underlay style I'm going to choose is going to be zigzag, and it's medium, okay? Right here. And that is, again, I'm using zigzag instead of center because it's a wider satin stitch. And the pull compensation, I'm not even going to add it because my lettering is so bold anyway. Now, to convert this to stitches, you go over here to the digitizing methods, and you choose autocomplete. That gives you your magic wand. Now you can just click on any letter and hit enter, and it converts it to stitches. You can see the stitches right there. You really only have to hold the control button and then click on all the letters that you want to convert to this stitch type and hit enter. And now they're all done. Now what we're going to do, we are now going to drop our magic wand by hitting the select object. We'll now deselect our object, and now we'll choose our next stitch type. Our next stitch type is going to be this blue fill stitch in here. So I will choose an area with pattern. And what I'll do here is actually choose the pattern fill that I want, okay? So I'm just going to go into my pattern catalog here. And let's see, let's pick this zigzag pattern, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my color. The color I'm going to do is going to be this light blue. And the next thing I'm going to do is my density. And density is going to be 5.85. My underlay for this type of fill pattern is going to be medium, Okay, medium 0.06 density, okay? I don't need a lot, of underlay to hold the material down. And I'm not going to worry about pull compensation on this. So now all we got to do is we're going to go to Auto Complete, click on the blue, hit Enter. It'll come in. And now I'll click on Control and click on these two other sections and hit Enter. And there we go. Now, next thing I want to do is my satin stitches, which are the outline of the scissors. So with that, I'm going to choose turning area with the zigzag, set the color to black, set my density to 5.50. My underlay is going to be centered. I don't have a very thick satin stitch that's going to go here, so I will choose centered underlay. The thicker you go, that's when you want to choose a different underlay, okay? Pull compensation, I'm going to set to 10% because we do have some narrow areas that when they sink into a fabric or a garment, I want to make sure that it doesn't sink in, that this narrows out so that when it pulls into the garment. So I'm going to compensate for that pulling effect so it looks like you see on screen here once it's applied to the garment, okay? And now once we're done with that, we can go ahead and click on the black. Oh. There we go. And then just simply click Enter. All right, there's my stitches. So we can actually turn off the image. We'll change our background color. And we have one more piece of information inside of here that we have to do. I'm going to go back to autocomplete. And I'll select this. Hold my control button. Just like this, and hit Enter. It's a good idea to always turn off your images, okay, before determining if you're complete or not, so you could find those missed pieces, okay. Let's take a look at that through the view and simulation. Take a look and see what we did. Okay, you see we have a lot of thread trims. This is one of the other issues that you'll see when you're creating things in stitches in pieces, okay. And it's easy to put those thread trims in the software. Just click on each letter, just like this one here, and up here is the thread trims, okay? You say, yes, I want a thread trim there. Click on the U. Yes, I want a thread trim there. You can do them all by simply just holding the control. Oh, no, I can't do it all. I got to do it one at a time in this. So I'm just going to hit yes. Click on the T and hit yes. H and hit yes. None of these will have thread trims, only because I converted them from a JPEG. But it's pretty simple. And if you do this as you go, after you convert your stitches, then you select your thread trimming. Now let's take a look at that. You see all my thread trims now. Now we do have to put some in one in the blue and then one in the black. So I'll just click on the blue, put a thread trim there. We'll do the black, make sure there's a thread trim there, thread trim on here, and a thread trim on the outside because it does have to jump from the outside to the inside. And we do one more here. Now let's take a look at our image. And there we go. Our image is complete. Okay? Now I know it looks pretty thick here, you know what I mean? But when this sews out to a fabric, it's going to sink into the fabric. So it's going to narrow out for you. It's going to narrow out for you anyway. Okay, now let's get to the subject matter. I want to, now that I've digitized this design, okay, last thing I'm going to do is actually going to click on embroidery, and I'm going to set my start and end points. Setting your start and end points is very important because without this actually tells the machine where to start and where to end. Without it, you've probably sewn garments before where when you press start, it does a thread trim right in the middle of the hoop. And then the hoop moves and it starts to sew where it needs to sew. It's because it doesn't have a command on where to start. So it does a thread trim, then it moves to where the first section is, and then starts sewing. Or if you see on the issue where it just sewed its last stitch in the design, and the next thing for the machine to do is go to the center of the hoop, Well, what happens if you don't put an endpoint command in there, it's going to do a thread trim, and then it's going to do another stitch from that last stitch and jump it right to the middle of the hoop. And then that's something you have to cut out. So always set your start and end points as your finished step. Okay, it is a finishing tool. Another thing you'll want to do is if you edit your image, if you change it, if you sewed it out and say, I don't like the pull compensation on that, let me go in and edit my image. If you edit your image, then again, the last step after editing the image and before saving is going to be to set the start and end points, okay? So if you change the shape, the size, the pull compensation, always set your start and end point, okay? All right. So now I set my start and end points. Now what I want to do is I want to print up a job sheet, okay? Now the job sheet is something that you could print up, put into a laminated binder that'll have all the information about the design, how many stitches it is, how big it is, what colors you're using, the sequence of colors so they know how to program the machine for color changes. Another piece of information we'll also include, if you assign it, is the right thread to pull, okay? So what you can do is if you go into the palette over on the left here, okay, this list here is mimicking what you see on the left side, okay, of your working screen, okay? And what it is, it's an RGB graph, red, green, blue graph, okay? You also can edit the palette, all right, so you could change color. So if I want to choose that red to a different red, I could choose it from here, maybe a deeper tone brick red, okay? And you see it changed over there. You also have what's called a Pic Tool Color, okay? Now, if the color you don't see here is on your screen, you can click on the Pic Tool. Let me just choose it. And I can pick from screen. And let's go and click on this blue. You see the blue come up? As soon as my eyedropper goes over it, it chooses the color. And then click on Apply. Or if I want to go blue, I can choose the blue. And you can see it's changing that color over here, okay? So that's a nice tool to have, especially when you can't accurately define a color. The other one you have is your thread charts. This is where you'd find your manufacturer's threads, okay? So when I go through this, the first thing, the line is actually the manufacturer thread. So if you buy your threads from Ungroup or Ackerman, which is your Isacord thread, they have polyester and rayon here. They also have Isilon and Isacord 315, 30, 40 weight thread, Brilder 40 weight. Then you have Brother thread. You have Coates thread. You got what is that? Fufu and Gunold. You got Gutermann, Iris, Janome, Madeira. By the way, Madeira Classic 40 is the primary thread color that you use for thread choice of your embroidery. It's the 40 means it's a 40 weight thread. Thread comes in anything from 30, 40, 50, 60 weight thread. That's the thickness of the cord of thread. You have Marathon, Robeson Anton. You have Royal Thread, Sulky, and that's it. They're your primary thread manufacturers. So if you do buy your thread from Madeira, just click on Classic 40. Now what I want to do is assign the thread. So what I'll do is I'm going to assign the red thread. I'm going to find red. And let's see. 1221. Okay? And what I'll do is assign it. So I will assign this to there. See, now it put code. This is thread cone 1221. And then I'm going to choose the other color I'm using is the blue. And that's this color, 6. And we will assign 1274. And then finally black. So choose the color from the spectrum over here. And find your black and assign it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to favorite these, okay? 1274, these are the threads that I buy regularly, okay, that I usually have in-house. You know, your navies, your reds, your whites, your grays. Once I have these, I'll actually set them as favorites. Okay, see that little star right there? And then we'll go to 1221, and we'll favorite that as well. Okay, and then we hit apply. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to make sure, there we go, it looks pretty good. All right, so the next thing I want to do is bring my threads up to the top over here, and to do that, I'm going to find that black that I had in here. You see the white dot next to the color? It's a color that is being used in the design. So I'm going to sign them up at the top here. Now, you don't have to do this. When you save this image, if you didn't align up your colors in sequential, like I did here, then it'll say needles not contiguous, okay? When you see that, it means that your threads that you used are not the first 3, first 4, first 5, first 6 colors in the list here, okay? Just select yes on that and it'll assign it for you. Normally I would do a lock stitch on each one, but when you do a thread trim, it automatically puts a lock in there, okay? So you don't have to double up the lock. The only time I'm doing lock stitches is when I'm doing my own text, okay? When I'm digitizing, hand digitizing my text. Then I need to put a lock stitch in there and assign the trim, okay? All right. Let's just move this over here. All right, so now that I'm done, what that benefits me is when I go to File and I go to Print and I go to Print Formats, when I go to Basic, I'm going to go to Basic Information, I'm going to go to Complete Tech Information. And what it's going to let me do, this is what I print out, okay? Number one, it tells me the name of the design, how many stitches are in the design, the size of the design. I could enter a price in here, okay? If I use one of the wizards, okay? The wizards are actually at the start of the design process where you could choose a complete wizard or a simple wizard. If I don't, when I print this out, I'll just hand write it in there. How many colors there are in the design. How many stop functions there are. This is where it's going to start, where it's going to end. Remember, we set those, okay? Start at first section, end at last section. This is the location where the design will be saved. Okay, so if I need to remember where I saved that design on my computer 5 years ago, then it'll tell me where it is, okay? And this is the size of the memory I need, at least 250 kilobyte, okay? Now this section right here tells me the sequence of the design. This design is going to show red parts of the design first, the blue, and then the black. Okay, we'll zoom down a little bit more. I'm going to go to meeting, there we go. And as we move down the screen, we could see my image here, okay? And it tells me, down here is very important too. Stitch number 1 is the first stitch to be sewn. There's 2,292 stitches in red, okay? I am using Classic 40 and the code of the thread is 1221 rust, okay? This is important for the machine operator, okay? Now it looks like it's going to print offline here, but it doesn't. It's just my screen resolution. It's kind of offsetting the text, so this will print up fine, okay? Now I did not sign color number 2 a certain color. That's why it's absent here, okay? I chose a different blue in the list to assign the Madeira thread. And then, of course, the black is actually cone 1000. It tells you it's black right there, okay? Further down, this section here is costing information, okay, where you figure out your costing. How many feet of thread? This actually is viewable when I do this, when I set it to here. This will help. You see my resolution is just a little off here, okay? In this design, I am using a total length of 1,991 inches, okay? Knowing that your cones of thread are actually I think they're not 5 meters, but 500 meters or something like that. You can actually reduce that to inches, and you can figure out how much your cost of this design is going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood with backing about anywhere from 8 to 12 cents. Okay. And that's it. Now I'll print this out, and then I'll actually sew out a sample of this design to test it out, make sure it sews good, and then I'll cut it out, and I will put that sample with this printout in a binder, so I have the information, printed information about the design. I also have a preview of the design that I can see. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go to that. Let's go ahead and go to this one here. And I usually do this, okay? I'll set my colors I intend to use at the top first. There's my red, there's my black, and maybe we'll use the pink for the border color, okay? Make it nice since it is Ribbon Awareness Week. Step number 1, we have an image. Step number 2 is we got to resize the image, and we vectorize the image because the customer wanted a 2-color heart like this. I'll go to layout, and we'll set this to about 4. We'll set it to 5.5 inches. This will be going on like a bag. And maybe it's a Valentine's Day gift for somebody. Okay. So basically to convert it to embroidery, I'm going to choose the inside colors first. So I go to embroidery. I choose a fill stitch. Once it opens up, I will choose the color I'm going to do first, which is going to be black. And then I'll choose the stitch style that I want. And remember, you have plenty of usable fill stitches here, okay? You have math patterns, you have creative patterns. Rarely do I ever have to get the locked ones on the screen here. Let's go ahead and grab this one. Let's go ahead and grab, let me see. Let's grab this one here. That's like a chain link. Set your color, set your density. Okay, I'm still using 5.85 for my fill. The underlay is going to be medium, and I don't really need any pole compensation. And now what I can do is, since I have a vector here, I can choose the black area and use Smart Design, and then click on Pattern, and it'll convert just like that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color to the red, which is going to be this. Oh, I got to deselect first. So let's go ahead and click on the red sections. I'm going to hold my control button so I can select them. Now, there we go. So I think I got them. So I'm going to click on here, change it to red. Let me make sure I'm doing it right. Let me turn off the embroidery first. So sometimes the embroidery being on won't let you select the pieces of the information behind it because the embroidery is on top. So I'm going to use Smart Design. I use Pattern, and there we go. So now we got our red in there, and now what we're going to do, we are going to go to Turning Area Zigzag. And we'll choose where that's going to go, and that's going to go right here. And then we're going to use Smart Design. And there we go. Now we got a warning message up here. Be mindful of the warning section. It's actually going to tell you where the problem is. Okay. There's a problem somewhere in this design. Let's take a look at let's turn off the vector. Let's look at our image. Okay. So to find out where this problem is, just double click, and it says it's a missing reference number in section number 9. So in the Object Manager, we can go to section number 9. It's already selected, and it has something to do with this, okay, with the outline, okay. And it's not liking it for some reason, and probably right down here is where the error is. Yep, that's where the problem is. So I'm going to turn off the 3D mode so I can see the stitches. And it looks like there's a couple nodes that are really out of place here, okay? So let me just see. Usually just changing stitch direction will help me, or shape, actually help generate a better stitch here. So I'm going to go to stitch direction, and I'm going to tell it to go like this. Oop. Click on it, stitch direction. That's got a stitch direction. Let's go stitch direction line over here. See if it comes back for me. All right, this here, I think, is where the problem is. Oh, I'll go back to where my stitches were. See, right there on this right side is where the problem is. So in order to create this design, I would need to do this pretty much manually. So to do it, just simply go to Path with Zigzag, set your underlay, pull compensation, and just start somewhere. And I'll set my width. You see that it's a little thin right there, so I'm going to set it to its density is 5.50. Width is going to be about 20, 25. Too much, 23. Now, see what I'm doing? I'm on straight lines, so I'm going to change that. I'm going to change it to curves, okay, your node styles, because this actually curves a lot. There we go. So now I'm on curves. Digitizing has gotten a lot easier as software has increased its functionality. Also, I got a question from AJ. AJ asks that when I'm doing this, is it important to find out where you start and end? Well, it's kind of like what you're trying to do is trying to draw a shape without retracing your line or picking up your pencil, kind of a puzzle. And if you think through it, on this, it's a continuous closed shape. It starts from one area and goes to another and stops. So this is really no problem. Make sure at the end here you want to overlap it a little bit. There we go. So there's my design. Okay. Take a look at that in the simulation. All right, so what do we got to do, guys? We got to put thread trims in the red, correct? So we'll go ahead and do that. It's very simple. And to address, you can put lock stitches in there, especially if you have a problem with your picker on your machine where it's actually unthreading. So just go ahead and go to Stitches, Yes, Lock Stitches, Classic. There is no yes or no on the lock stitches because it automatically puts it in there because of the thread trim. Now the different types of lock stitches is Classic actually does it does what's called a 3 stitches, and it goes back on those 3 stitches with 2 stitches, okay? And it kind of locks it in there from overlapping. The Star does a little asterisk, okay, just to tie the stitches together. A twist is basically the same thing. It does an X. The cross is just, the X is actually with a straight line. The cross is basically an X, and then the arrow is basically, it looks just like that. So it does lock stitches. I don't like to use these because they show up as little tiny pin splotches and on the design, especially when you use them black. So I don't really use those. I've only used Classic. All right, so now let's take a look at our view in simulation, and just that one there, and I think I got it. So it's going to be this one here where I didn't put one in, and then Classic. View, simulation, and there we got our image, okay? All right. Any questions? Any questions at all? All All right, Randy's got a question. And Randy, go ahead and when you raise your hand, you just like type in your question there. All right. All right, if there's no other questions, I don't, oh, there it is. Here we got one. How would you overlap the black red fill areas? Well, if I done my pole compensation correctly, well, it's a fill stitch, okay? And they're going to be overlapped a little bit. You can, it depends on the material you're sewing in. If the material you're sewing on is going to be a little bit plusher, then yes, you probably want to add pole compensation. And I only want to add pole compensation to the black, okay, instead of all the areas of the red. If that's the case, just click on the black, go to your pole compensation, and just go to a fixed pole compensation, and just do soft. And now you'll see I have a little bit more overlap there. Not much. So let's go and do a medium. There we go. See, now we're overlapping in all areas. Okay. It all depends upon your material. If I was sewing on like a jacket or a bag, like this was going to be for, on a bag which is a little bit more coarser material, then there's not going to be a lot of moving of the fabric, especially if my density is correct. Then I don't really need that overlap on a fill stitch. On a satin stitch, I do, okay? Just because of the structure of what the satin stitch looks like. All right. Another question is, without a lock stitch, would it all fall apart? Lock stitches are automatically applied when the thread trimming function occurs. If you notice, your needle will go up and down several times before the trimming occurs, and then the wiper comes out and picks up the cut thread. That couple, 3 stitches or 4 or 5 stitches that it's doing before the trimming and the wiper comes out is the lock stitch, okay? It always locks the embroidery. When it goes to sew the next part of the embroidery, you'll see that the needle comes down about 5 or 6 times in slow motion. It's called inching mode. It's putting another lock stitch in there, and then it actually starts sewing. When it gets to the end of that, then it'll do a trim. The only time I have to insert my lock stitches is when I'm manually creating digitizing, okay? When I'm actually creating a letter, okay, and I don't have trim commands, and I do not have lock stitches, okay? So I have to enter those informations in that. All right, any other questions? All right, well, I mean, I hope you liked it. I hope you liked the class today. It wasn't that much information, but I was able to walk through a design using different types of art media and different types of techniques. Hope you grabbed something from that, as well as assigning thread colors to your embroidery. So on the printout, you have full detailed information for the operator, plus years from now when that customer calls and wants to reorder, you'll know exactly what cone of thread you pulled, and then replicate the job exactly as you did it years ago. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Friday.